to speak at this conference. I think it's a great idea, and I think this conference is clear evidence of the increasing value and importance of technology, and the fact that so many people have attended yesterday and today, I think is evidence of how much people value and understand that technology is not going away, and it's something that we're going to have to engage with consistently in the future, regardless of whether we're teaching online or blended or face-to-face. So, and it's great to see so many people here on a Sunday. I know Sunday's not the best day for people to be getting up and attending online conferences, so I really do appreciate that as well. I'll just share my presentation and just check that people can see that, and just get my thing ready. Can I just check, can everyone see my presentation? Just let me know. Yes, in David. The chat box. Yes. Yeah, that's great. Perfect. Okay. And just to explain the visuals that you see on the screen, rather than going for some generic stock photo, I decided to actually show pictures of the TEL team that I work with at Sheffield. And this was, just to give you an idea of how many people we have at Sheffield working with technology, but also to acknowledge the work that they've done, in the last few years working with me, but specifically in the last 6 months or so since, the COVID situation started. These people have done sort of incredible work in helping to shift us online with minimal fuss and minimal effort, and it's made life so much easier for us at our centre for teachers to adjust. Putting those photos up was a way for me to say thank you to them, and I'll talk in a little bit more detail later about who they are and what exactly their roles are. And a little bit of explanation about the title as well, which may sound a little bit obscure at the moment, which is that one hour's remission should be plenty. This came really from a chat I had. I'll keep the person anonymous, who about a year or so ago, and we were talking about sort of flipping our courses and moving to a sort of a flip learning model for our pre-sessional courses. And I remember talking to him, and he said that they were going to move towards this particular model, and we had done that previously to them. And I said to them, okay, I said, how long have you got for that? He said, well, we've got about 5 months or 4 or 5 months to get that done. And I said to him, well, how many people are involved in this? How many people do you have to do this? Because it was going to be like 50% of the course was going to be sort of put online. And he said, well, it's just me. It's just me doing it. I don't have anyone else to help me. I wasn't given anyone else to help me. I said, do you know that much about sort of putting stuff online? And he said, well, not that much. I'm going to have to sort of learn it on the way and try to work that out. And then I said, well, how much sort of remission do you have for this? How much time are you being given to develop this? And this was his response. He said, my boss said to me that 1 hour's remission should be plenty to be able to develop this content. And, this is an extreme situation, but it's not uncommon to hear that from teachers, that they're expected to, deliver content, to shift things online and change things with little remission or help or support from their management to enable them to do that. And the purpose of my session today is to argue that, as EAP centres, we have to commit to building technology into our sort of staffing programme, and to make sure that we have a sort of fixed team who are able to support both teachers and students, and explain why having these teams will enable you to be a lot more flexible and responsive to some of these sort of difficult situations that we've faced in the last few years. And I don't just mean COVID. We're even prior to that, we were all faced with shifts in markets and shifts in where students come from, and we've had to respond in many different ways to these things. And technology is a great way to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about ways that we've used technology to help do that in Sheffield. What I would like to do perhaps at the beginning, though, is just ask a few questions from you. And just so I get a sense, because I don't always know obviously what's going on in different places around the world, and I'll be very interested to learn this. And just drop a note in the chat box. It doesn't have to be long, just sort of a couple of words or something. Any information you can suggest about sort of technology support you have at your centre? And do any of your teachers at your centre have sort of remission to help provide technology support for teachers and students, or help develop any sort of online content to so students can access those during courses. If anyone could just drop a note, I'll just wait a sort of a little while just to see what people say. Thank you, Tom. Obviously, Tom worked at Sheffield. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff. Yeah, it can be very sort of informal sometimes, or sort of self-nominating, or people take on the job even if they're not necessarily, you know, being given that official role. And there's a lot of that. I mean, sometimes you get a lot of IT support, maybe on a technical level, but perhaps not the kind of pedagogical support as well. Yeah, and a lot of people are just sort of thrown into these jobs, and so, you know, you're now responsible for dealing with that. Yeah, and there is a lot of learning on the job. Thank you, Rama. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is often quite more sort of IT or technical support if things break down, rather than necessarily having sort of teachers in place whose job it is to support with the pedagogical side, which is often really the help we need. Yeah, Jodie, it's great to hear that in your centre you do have that. Yeah, and it's good to hear that centres are beginning to sort of wise up to the need for this as well. So it's great to hear that. But I'd sort of talk about our situation at Sheffield, and you can see whether this rings any bells for your situation where you are, or whether that's a model that you think you might be interested in taking on board. Just to sort of put it in the perspective of size though, because obviously EAP centres are of different sizes and different capacities. I just want to give a brief overview about some statistics about where I work at the LTC at Sheffield, because we are quite a big centre. I think significantly bigger than a lot of EAP centres in the UK. We have around 160 teachers at our centre. And I don't know if you know how many you have at yours, but it'd be interesting to sort of compare those in terms of numbers. A lot of those are full-time or nearly full-time. So it's a very large centre, and we've got several sort of sites throughout the city where they're based. We have a lot of different programmes at Sheffield, and that's why we need so many centres. We have pre-sessional program, pre-sessional in the summer, pre-sessional year-round. We have year-round general English programs and part-time general English programs. We provide teachers for our foundation college. We do pre-foundation programs. We do in-sessional support. We do English language support of different kinds. We also run CELTA courses and Delta courses and various other teacher training programs. So we've got this very large centre with a lot of different sort of working parts and programs running. And to give a sense of sort of size in terms of things like pre-sessional programs, particularly in the summer, you know, on average we have around 2,000 to 3,000 pre-sessional students in the summer. Last year, I think for the face-to-face we had around 3,000. This year for the online program we had around 2,000. And supporting all that, we have around 10 academic directors. And again, the directors for a variety of these programs. But included among those 10 academic directors are myself. I'm an academic director, but I'm a director for technology enhanced learning. And this is what we call a cross-cutting role, which means that I support all of the different programs across the centre. And I just want to go through briefly my TEL team, again, as a way of kind of acknowledging the work they do, but also just to explain sort of what we'll do and exactly how much kind of remission and hours we've got to work on different things. So I'm the Director of Technology Enhanced Learning, and as part of that role, and it's a grade 8 position, I have full remission, and my role really involves developing an online strategy and technology strategy for the whole centre, managing any projects related to technology, training the TEL team in various things, and also developing any online courses that we plan to open. But with me, I have a variety of people to help. You know, a colleague of mine, Nick, who's been with me for many years now, he's one of our learning technologies coordinators. He has, well, normally he has 9 hours remission. Now, since March, or since around April time, since COVID started, he's been on full remission, simply because the amount of support obviously has increased, and will be certainly for the next you know, term or so. And he provides teacher support and training, student digital literacy training, and he's also our summer pre-sessional TEL director. We've got Claire Bassaris. She's our online support hub coordinator. She gets around 7 hours remission. And when I say hours, I mean teaching hours, not actual hours. Our teaching hours are about 1.6. So you can sort of multiply that to get the actual hours they're working on things. And Claire has a variety of roles. One of them is to maintain an online support website for students. So we have lots of language resources available. So students can go and engage with different resources. She also runs online webinars, particularly for distant students, although to a certain degree, all of our students are distant at the moment. And she also manages our online writing advisory support, which is a system where students can submit parts of an online essay and get feedback on them. We also do a face-to-face version, but we also have an online version of that. We have Matt McDonald, who provides program technology support. He supports individual programs within the centre. And again, at the moment, particularly, he has full remission, and he trains teachers and students and develops online content for courses. We've got Anastasios Acopolis. He's an online course developer and tutor. He gets around 10 hours remission, and he's our sort of corpus specialist. He develops materials for various programs, and he's also a tutor on an online corpus course we run for teachers. Yes, lots of Greeks out there. I think we've got 2 or 3 at our centre as well. Penny. We've got Laurie Wilson, who also helps with a variety of things. Particularly, he's skilled at online content and course development. Again, he's on full remission at the moment. He does teacher support. He develops materials for some of our online programs, particularly the Online Delta, and he also develops flipped content for our pre-sessional. Gez Edwards, again, he's an online content developer. He's got about 7 hours remission. He develops asynchronous content, and he's a tutor on our online learning technologies course. And finally, we've got Adam, who's our Foundation College Technology Coordinator. And normally, again, he has a certain amount of remission, but now he's on full remission, and he maintains the sort of VLE for our Foundation College, and he also develops flipped content for courses. Now, I've put sort of 8 people up there, but we do actually have others. There was space requirements here, and but there are other people, and just to mention their names, we've got Bashar and Mary and Lucy, who are also part of our TEL team, and they provide additional support and help as well within our centre. That was, I went through that quite lengthily, but I felt it was important to understand exactly the range of the team and what they're all engaged with and what they do. It's not just sort of tech support. They're engaged in a whole variety of roles and responsibilities. Some of it's more tech support, some of it's more developing content. Now, having all of these people enables us to do certain things, and really this is the question, because obviously it's expensive to have all these people, and they're not teaching, and they're not directly in front of students, so it's expensive to have all these people. But what does this enable us to do? I think most importantly, and in the current sort of situation, this is a very important sort of feature or skill to have in your centre. It enables you to be very responsive and agile to shifting situations. And I think we felt this particularly with COVID and our response to that. While it wasn't perfect, we were able to get up and running with online courses much quicker, I think, than a lot of centres, simply because we had the knowledge and expertise and depth of team to be able to do that. I remember our university announced late on a Friday evening that they were closing in March. Most of us didn't find this out to Monday morning. Monday morning, we had a meeting with the TEL team to coordinate what we were going to do. On Tuesday, we had trained, I think, 40 to 50 teachers across the tools that they were going to need to develop online, to deliver online courses. On Wednesday, we trained the students in the various tools they needed. By Thursday, most of our courses that had programs running were up and running with online learning. It wasn't perfect, but we were able to get most of those courses ready to go with both students and teachers in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing within the space of around 3 days. And this is a very large centre, and that involved at that point probably around 50 to 60 teachers. So it was a lot of work, but it was only possible by having such a rich team of individuals who could help with all the training and support necessary to do that. And the feedback we got from students was very good at the end of that period. And although it was obviously a shift for a lot of them, I think they didn't feel it was such a jarring shift because the transition was enabled by our technology enhanced learning team. Ooh. I mean, another thing that we had to do, and this was another way that we were responsive in Agile, was a couple of years ago, we had to move to a flipped learning module where we had to create around 60 hours of online content in 4 months. Again, we were under extreme sort of time pressures to do this. The reason for this was that our centre had increased and the number of students coming for our pre-session in the summer had increased from about 2,000 to 3,000, and it just wasn't possible to house all of those students. So we had to look for different models to enable us to not have so many students in class at the same time. So we moved to a flipped learning model where around 50 hours of, or around 50% of the course was delivered online through interactive content. And we managed to do this in around 4 months. We were able to create around 60 hours of online content in about 4 months. And again, only because we had that team available to do that. And you can see some examples of the content there. I'll leave this running for a little bit so you can see that. The content was proper interactive content. It wasn't sort of PDFs or PowerPoints just thrown at the students. It was content that we sat down and we thought about and we drafted and redrafted and created. And you can see that this was the kind of thing students would be doing with the content. And we made about 60 hours of content, around 80 sort of individual pieces of content that students had to interact with. Again, it's not perfect, but I think it was content that students engaged really well with, and they didn't feel, because their hours were being reduced a little bit from normal, they didn't feel they were somehow being sort of cheated because the content itself was quite rich and interactive. And to be able to do that within that short frame of time required about 5 full-time teachers a week for that 4-month period. And obviously that enabled us to have 1,000 more students, and obviously the financial gains there were considerable for our centre. But again, it did need to have people who were trained to do that. We couldn't have just shifted to creating that content if there wasn't firstly the people with the time, but also with the skills and knowledge to do it. And we did have the people who had been trained to use this software, had been trained to develop online content, who were able to create this within a short space of time. So that was a tremendous bonus for us. The other thing it allows you to do really is to build programs of training. And I think that's so essential now in the current climate. Often teachers are being thrown into online teaching with little or no training at times. And certainly talking to people who, even at the University of Sheffield in different departments, are not always being given the amount of training they need. But I think at our centre, we are able to build programs of training to allow both teachers and students to understand the technology they're using and to use it reasonably effectively when they teach online. For our students, because I think we tend to think of teachers, but it's important to train students as well. We provide all of our students with about 3 hours of digital literacy training on any program that starts at our centre. And in the past that was face-to-face. We used to take them to computer rooms and do it. Now obviously a lot of that is online, and it's not just synchronous training. We also provide asynchronous materials for them to work through to deepen their understanding of digital literacy. And you can see there an example of some of that. This is where our university has these digital literacy sort of ideas and literacies, and we try to sort of take them through the content that we create. So I think student training is as vital and important as the teacher training, and sometimes we underestimate that because students are digital literate in some ways. They're not necessarily academically digital literate, and it's important they understand not only how to use mobile phones, but also to use referencing software, how to take notes effectively using various technical tools. And I think this is the kinds of digital literacies we're trying to train them in. And also, we provide training internally for our teachers as well. And we do a lot of face-to-face, not so much now obviously, but in the past we had lots of face-to-face training with our teachers. Now, it wasn't always possible for 160 of them to come, so we did used to do things such as record sessions, and so we'd have sessions in the centre, but we'd record them using video devices and then make that available to other people within the centre, and we could make that available to them through a teacher portal, which we found a really nice way to share information, to share training resources, to share videos with teachers. You can see that there. Oh, sorry. Not all of the training sessions were necessarily about technology. You can see some other topics there like mindfulness and teaching and don't kill the book. But we recorded these, and now we've got this huge bank of resources that we can draw upon to share with teachers so that they can access the workshops that have been run at our centre. Also, as part of our training, it allows us to run dedicated online training courses. So rather than ad hoc workshops or individual workshops, we do actually have now systems of internal training for our teachers, which will guide them and help them really understand technology better and use it more effectively. I know Penny mentioned this course at the beginning, and I know we have a discount available for this, but it's a course that we've been running for a few years now, and it's designed both for external people to take, and obviously we do make some small amount of money from that, but we also use it to train our staff internally as well. So we have many of our Sheffield staff go through this course for free. So it enables them to sort of get up to speed with technology and have a more systematic program of training. We have another course, which is the Acopolis course as well. We do understand for current corpus is a key thing now, I think, in understanding how students can access language and vocabulary and make sure that it's appropriate. And so we do a course which looks at corpus tools. And again, we're putting some of our teachers through that as well. And good to see someone from here who's taken it. Moreno took that. So thanks. So yeah, these are designed as short sort of CPD courses. Learning technology is about 11 weeks. The corpus course is about 6 weeks. You can just sort of see some screenshots there from some of the courses. And like I say, they're very practical based courses looking at practical tools and techniques, but also exploring a little bit of theory behind why we use certain tools. Now, this is slightly anecdotal, and I'm not sure we can sort of say this is definite, but I do think that if you commit to technology in your centre and you commit to having a TEL team, then it can help to attract better teachers to your centre. Certainly when I talk to teachers about why they chose Sheffield, particularly for things like pre-sessionals in the summer, often the conditions and the pay are quite similar across these centres, and a couple of people said they chose Sheffield because of its integration of technology, because they wanted to learn more about technology and they felt that Sheffield might be a good place to do that. That's why many of them selected it over another centre. So I think if you're committed to technology and you're showing a willingness to develop in technology, teachers will want to come to your centre and work there because they feel it's part of their own internal development as well. And like I said, when we run our pre-sessional, teachers get a lot of opportunity to learn about technology, about things like flipped learning, and so we're sort of building some of their own background knowledge as well when they're teaching on our program. Another thing we've really managed to do, which I think technology can help do, is to reduce teacher hours. And last summer for our pre-sessional program, teachers used to teach about 19 hours. But by moving to a flipped learning model and a fully sort of 50% flipped learning model, it enabled us to reduce teachers' hours so they didn't have to teach 19 hours, and instead they were down to around 15 hours, and gave them more time to think about their classes, to think about their teaching. And I think that was a really helpful thing, because students were obviously spending a lot of time engaging with flipped content, and then it allowed them fewer hours to teach. I think another thing that building a TEL team can do for your centre is to build a culture of technology. And I think this is really important, that there is a sense, I think at Sheffield, that technology is part of what we do. It's integrated into our training, it's integrated to our programs, it's integrated with our students. And I think this builds a culture of technology where perhaps there's less fear around it. Teachers are expected to use it, but they're given the support and the training they need to use it. And I think they feel sort of fully supported and helped. And this builds a technology culture, which I think in the current climate obviously is very, very important. It does also additional benefits like a reduced environmental footprint. I think over the last few years, we've worked really hard through the TEL team and working with other teachers to reduce the amount of paper that we've produced at our centre. We've put all lesson records online, things like induction materials and stuff, rather than producing them binders for teachers. We've put all of those materials online so teachers can access them in various ways. And this has brought down our paper usage quite substantially. And so I think that's one of those incidental offshoots but benefits of building this sort of technology culture at your centre. Okay, so what does this mean then? So just sort of summarize some of the key points that I've talked about. If you have a TEL team, and if you have a commitment to building sort of a TEL team within your centre, then it will enable you to be responsive to student and programme needs. And this is obviously vital at the moment with the current crisis and the current situation. But I don't think we need to see it just in terms of COVID. I think just going ahead, these markets are ever shifting. And in the past, even before COVID, we were having to deal with changes in where our students came from or what programs they wanted. And we're constantly having to change what we offered students as well. And unless you can sort of have a team which is able to adapt to that and to use technology to help you adapt to that, that becomes very difficult to do. Like I said, it enables programs of training for students and teachers. And again, rather than sort of ad hoc training or sort of in the moment training, you have systems in place to provide training for students and teachers to make sure that they're able to use that technology effectively. Hopefully it can also be a way to attract better teachers to your centre. If teachers feel that technology is integrated well into your programs, they may want to come because they want to develop themselves and understand how to use technology better. And it also allows us to establish sort of a culture of technology at your centre that enables these additional offshoots and advantages, such as a reduced environmental footprint. However, obviously, what are some recommendations or suggestions here? Because this looks fine, and I'm painting a very rosy picture of the situation at Sheffield. But it's been many years getting to this point. I came to the University of Sheffield in 2009, and obviously now it's 2020. I became the Director of Technology in 2014. So it's taken about 10 years or so for us to get to this point. So it wasn't a sort of an easy, quick road, and it does take time. So what are some sort of recommendations that may help other centres to think about this, and if they want to implement more technology, what do they need to do? This sounds obvious, and it is obvious, but you have to say it, okay? And this is that you have to provide support from the top, and it has to come from management. We are extremely fortunate at Sheffield to have a centre director, Richard Simpson, who is extremely supportive of technology and has been from really the get-go. When I joined in 2009, the Sheffield Centre, there was already someone in place with half remission to support teachers with technology, and that's when we had a relatively small team. And he has now implemented turning my role into a grade 8 role a few years ago, and he's allowed me to bring on board all of these other people because he understood the value of having so many people with those technology skills and with the time to be able to support teachers and students. And it made financial sense at times when we were moving to a flip model to use those people to create the content that enabled us to bring in more students. I think another important thing is the importance of ring fencing hours for projects and support. And certainly at the beginning, when I first started trying to sort of build technology and programs and online courses at our centre, it was very difficult because I would get someone and say, look, I've got this person for a few hours, but then that person would have those hours taken away from them because they were needed for something else, for teaching or some other program or something like that. So it was a real fight to keep those people. And eventually we're now in a position where, you know, I can now say, I want this person for a certain number of hours, and I know I've got that person for that time, and they're not going to be taken away from me at any point because they are, you know, they are part of the TEL team and they have those dedicated hours. So it's important that hours are ring fenced and they're not taken away at any point. You know, we found it really useful within our team to distribute hours and rotate roles as well, so that, you know, at different points of the year or different times during their job, you know, they're doing different roles. Sometimes they'll be on sort of technology support for students and teachers. Other times they'll be developing online content for courses. You know, sometimes they'll be on full remission, sometimes on half remission. It allows them to sort of dip back into teaching and come back to technology, and allows them that variety as well. I think a really important thing, I think there's a tendency sometimes to think it's all about sort of the technology itself. Let's pay for more laptops, let's pay for more software, let's pay for more subscriptions. I don't think that's the best way forward. I think what we need to do is to focus on and pay for training for teachers, not technology. Okay, a really well-trained teacher can do a lot with very little. Okay, whereas a teacher who's not very well trained, is not sort of fully understanding of the technology, you know, even if you give them the most wonderful software and computers, they're not going to be able to produce anything. So, you know, investing in training is really, really important. You know, we've sent people on various courses, you know, external courses. People have done master's programs. You know, we've paid for, you know, these IH and Consultants E and all these various organizations run online courses to develop skills, and we've put lots of people through those to make sure that we've got the skills within our centre to be able to do all of these things that we want to do. And sort of looking from sort of the negative side, and this comes back to the title of the presentation, is don't expect miracles from minimal remission. You can't say, well, you've got 2 hours a week, you know, for the next 4 weeks to create an online course or something like that. That's never going to work. And you know, I know a lot of people here are teachers rather than directors or managers, but the only thing I can sort of say to you is you know, if you can talk to your program directors about this, if you can talk to your managers about this, you know, try to get across the importance of this. And if you are a director or a manager, you know, really do think about this. Don't expect absolute miracles from a couple of hours of remission. It's just not fair on teachers. It adds to their stress. You really do need to give people the time and space to work on these things. And the other thing, again, really very much talking to sort of directors here, you know, don't reduce people's hours when it's financially convenient. And I do appreciate that finances are tight at the moment, and everyone's going through this difficult period. But sometimes you have to kind of, you know, stick your feet in a little bit and say that we can't progress unless we allow these people the time to develop these materials. It's not enough to expect teachers on top of their teaching, on top of preparing lessons, top of dealing with technology, to also expect to you know, support other teachers or produce online content. That's a lot to do. And I think, you know, don't treat technology as a luxury. It really isn't these days. And I think that's perhaps obviously coming to focus a lot more in the last 6 months or so. But I still think there is this hope in some cases that it's all just going to go away. In a few months' time, you know, we'll all be back to normal and we won't have to worry about this anymore. But I think we're seeing the reality of this is very different. You know, COVID is morphing and changing in all different kinds of way. And we don't know what the situation is going to be in 3 months or 6 months. And it's likely there is going to be, continued online, blended, hybrid learning for the foreseeable future. So there has to be a willingness to invest in that and a willingness to invest in the staff to develop the courses and the content and the materials to enable this to happen. So in terms of sort of recommendations, obviously do the first 4, but don't do those last 3, would be the 3 things that I would say. These are some sort of general recommendations, and I'm happy, obviously, if people want to contact me individually, I'd be happy to discuss any of those with people. So, so I think I've probably finished a little bit earlier than planned. What I do have, if people are interested, if you want to sort of see the slides again, if you want to be able to show them to someone to sort of show them what we're doing at Sheffield, you can get that link there, and I'll put that link in the chat box. Let me just grab it, I think. This is a shortened link, but that's the extended link that goes to that. And from there, that you can grab the slides themselves, and also some examples of things like the flipped content that we've created and some of the digital literacy content as well, so you get an idea of what we've been doing at Sheffield.
Don't worry, David, that you finished a bit earlier. Okay. You have plenty.
Give them a break as well between the next one, maybe.
Yes. And you have plenty of questions too.
Oh, okay, yes, I'm able to keep up.
So the first question says, did you get university-wide additional support to students and teachers, or was all support provided by your team? Were those 15 teaching hours synchronous and with 1 or more groups?
Let's just see, what was the question again? Should you say it again? So there's sort of several questions there. The question about the 15 hours, that was synchronous. Yes, that was synchronous. But that was the previous year. That wasn't this year. I think the hours, yeah, it was about 15, but it was 10 hours of sort of teaching and about 5 hours of tutorials a week.
With 1 or more groups per teacher. How many groups?
Just one group. But I think Phil was talking about this yesterday in his session. Basically a class or a group was like 2 classes together. So there would be 2 teachers in an online room with around 28 students. They would only be responsible for half those students in terms of marking and tutorials and things like that. But they taught them together in the same online room.
What about university-wide additional support? So what about the University of Sheffield?
I mean, they do provide it. I mean, the problem always with these things is that, and I'm sure people are finding this at their own universities, they are massively stretched. They're trying to provide support across so many different programs and to so many different people. And also, again, with the best will world, our central sort of technology people are great. They don't necessarily know the needs of our particular teachers. And I think the needs of university lecturers is very different from the needs of EAP teachers. Most of our at the university, they need to deliver lectures, and so that's one style of teaching, and that's going to be using things like Blackboard Collaborate in one way. But obviously, what we're doing is far more sort of class-based. It needs practice, it needs interaction, it needs talking. That's a very different way of managing an online room, I think. So it's things like breakout rooms and things like that. At the university, they don't really focus very much on those things because it's just not part of the training up there. It's just not what's needed. But at our centre, we really do need that. And so we had to design our own training to meet the needs of our particular teachers, because it is such a different way of teaching from the rest of the university.
I have another interesting question here, really interesting one. Someone is asking if you're still teaching EAP to stay, current in your practice, to be in shape.
Yes, I do. In various ways I do. I mean, I don't do it all the time, but I do it in various ways. I sort of do some volunteer teaching I teach on a program with sort of Syrian academics, which enables me to carry on doing some EAP, although again, that's online. And I sort of train on EAP sort of technology courses and things like that. I don't do a lot of direct EAP teaching simply because we have enough teachers to do that. But it's something I probably should do just to sort of keep my hand in and keep comfortable with it as well.
Another question from Kate Anderson, really, really interesting one. She says, one of the biggest challenges in the process was helping those students who were like in lockdown in their homes, and everyone was at their homes, and you can't really provide the hands-on training that you could in a face-to-face situation, like sitting down next to someone and show him how to use Zoom. Yeah. So how, like her question is, how can we best support our colleagues who may feel very overwhelmed, especially in centres that have not traditionally offered extensive TELS support?
It's a very good question, and thanks so much for that, Kate. And I think in terms of support, I think, again, because we do have a team who are able to do that, what we were able to do, rather than provide, we were able to provide individual help for teachers. And I think one thing we can do, and if you do have someone with some hours for technology support, is have some system of getting teachers to sign up for sort of individual meetings, so that, they may have very specific training issues or technology issues that need to be resolved. That's difficult to do that in a situation where there's lots of you in an online room. So if you can set up sort of individual, even if only for 15 minutes, to try to identify what the individual issues are, that can be a way of providing that individual support. And it was something we had quite significantly during our summer pre-sessional. Teachers could ask for individual meetings, and then a member of our TEL team would sort of set up a video meeting with them for just 10-15 minutes to try to resolve whatever issue they are having. Because everyone has slightly different problems related to their connection or software or computers, etc.
One of my classmates from my master's degree, Rahma Timer, very nice seeing you here. She's asking another interesting question. I will adapt the question a little bit.
Okay.
But basically she's asking about training. And what about training during pre-sessionals? For example, when you're teaching a pre-sessional, an intensive one, how can you integrate training into, we all know when we teach pre-sessionals, either online or face-to-face, we have limited time for training. Yes. Okay, so how can you integrate that into an intensive situation?
It's very difficult. I mean, I think obviously what you try to do is front load as much of the training into the induction as possible, and to make the induction as long as possible so that you're able to provide, a significant amount of training. And I don't know how long people's inductions were for their pre-sessionals elsewhere. I mean, we had a week-long induction for teachers, so sort of a Monday to Friday induction with, as Tom said, we get about 8 days of induction for Sheffield. And try to front load as much of that training as possible. However, we were able to add additional training sessions for teachers throughout the summer. And we were able to offer, I think, a couple of additional training sessions. And we tended to do that based on what was observed. We did observations of teachers in their online room. And some of our teacher trainers did that. And then based on what we heard from them, they ran a couple of additional sessions during the summer. I don't think these are optional sessions, and I think you can't force teachers to engage in them because they've got so many other things to do. But if you can offer that, then I think a process of observations and then feeding back some kind of training based on those observations is a great way of helping them progress and develop during the summer.
Jodie Bradford is asking something very, very practical. How did you deal with the time difference with China? How, like she felt very, very constrained because of the time difference.
Yeah, I think we all were, because I mean, 95% of our students came from China. I think we had two big issues with China. Obviously, is the time, and so everything had to be in the morning, basically, so that it didn't finish too late in China. So most of our classes were sort of, it was 9 to 10, and then sort of 10:30 to 11:30, and then tutorials from 12 to 1 in the UK. So it wasn't too late in China for that to happen. I think the other big challenge for us was obviously the sort of what they call the firewall, the Chinese firewall, and that caused extra restrictions on what we could use with students, and trying to guess what would be blocked and what wouldn't be blocked was always something of a challenge in the summer, you know, whether you can use this tool or that tool. So we had to be very sort of limited in what we could use with them, because we were never quite sure. And it seemed to vary from individual student to individual student in China, and region to region. So students in the south seemed to be able to access some stuff, and students in the north couldn't access others, or students on this mobile provider could access it, but students on this mobile provider couldn't. I mean, I know you're based in China, so you may be aware of some of these strange
we're very, very lucky at the University of Nottingham. We're extremely lucky. We don't have these constraints. We can use YouTube and Padlet, and we use different servers, so we have access to most tech tools that we are supposed to use. And when we have this freedom, like to use technology in our classrooms, as long as this is something we can access from the computer we have in our classrooms. So we're really, really lucky that we use like a different server, and we have access to a lot of tech tools that I personally use. I use Padlet from day one.
I think you're very lucky. I think some universities have their own kind of sort of official sort of VPNs internally, and it seems like that's fairly common in China. But obviously, bringing students from outside, we're in Sheffield. It's we did have a kind of a VPN, but it was not great. So
another very, very interesting question, which has to do with quality control. What about peer observations? What about assessing teacher training effectiveness?
Yeah, we did have, again, we do have a fairly good sort of teacher training team, and they were utilized in the summer to observe teachers. I think we felt in the summer it was, quality control wasn't our primary sort of goal, because we knew teachers were really stressed. This was so new for them, and adapting to teaching online, to start going in and doing very sort of heavy-handed observations would have been, I think unfair on them under the circumstances. So we did this very sort of light touch system of having our teacher trainers go in for like half an hour and just observe some of their lesson, and then have a chat with them afterwards. It wasn't a sort of an official observation, but then based on that, we produced some sort of training sessions, and also produced some documentation saying, well, look, these are observed good practices in the classroom. These are some things to think about in terms of improving the quality. So I think certainly at this stage, what you don't want is very sort of heavy-handed sort of quality control observations, and with the teachers, given how difficult the situation is.
Another very, very interesting question is from Kwab Asare. Sorry if I've mispronounced your name, Kwab. So he's asking your thoughts about hybrid teaching. I mean, for example, when you have some remote with students physically in the classroom, but then remote learners. But I'm going to adapt this question because I would like to know your thoughts about hybrid teaching when you have all the students in the classroom and you have half of your teachers in class face-to-face teaching, and some of them being stranded in other countries. So how can we approach both situations?
That's a really tricky one, I think. I mean, that's certainly something that's been discussed at our centre, that this might be something that might happen, that, there may be a situation where you've got, a teacher in the classroom, and then half the students are in the class, and then half of them are somewhere else. And, I think technically it's very challenging to set that up, I think. In terms of where is the teacher, where is the camera, can they see what's going on in the lesson, can they see the whiteboard, if they're not actually physically in the class, how do you do that? I think that would take a lot of sort of technical expertise to be able to set that up effectively, so it works effectively as well. At this point, I think that's a difficult thing to set up. I think either having face-to-face, or online, or blended where there's some face-to-face and online, but this idea of those mixing, I think, becomes very, very challenging.
But I believe in the future, this hybrid situation is going to stay in place. And I think
so, yeah.
We need to help our students, and we need to familiarize them more with online learning, online teaching. I have a personal question.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned a lot of things about training and how to train our teachers. But what about the recruitment process? maybe we should include those questions. I've worked in 5 UK universities, another university in Kuwait, another university in Dubai. I was never asked this question, how familiar you are with technology. So what about the recruitment process? Maybe we need to change a few things there?
It's a very good point. And I think, that's something that we've certainly stepped up a little bit. And I think like you, I don't think we were great in our recruitment process of really identifying what sort of technology knowledge people had. I think we always had like one question, which was, how do you use technology or something like that. I think since COVID started and everything, we've adjusted our process to actually include a lot more questions asking about, if you were going to deliver this lesson, how would you deliver it online? What tools do you use and stuff like that? Because, knowing that will give us a sense of how easy it's going to be for them to adapt to an online environment.
I mean, yes, it's to be honest with you, usually I'm the youngest person in the room. And I believe in EAP, we have very, very experienced teachers and tutors. But the thing is, when you are more than 55 or 50 or even 60 years old, how familiar you are with technology and how quickly can you adapt? So maybe we need to, lower the barrier and forget about this, this stigma. You're a young teacher, you're 25, you're 26, you're 27, you cannot teach EAP even if you have the qualifications to do that. So maybe it's time to change that, because I always receive this question from my students. You're coming from Greece, you're not a native speaker, and you did a master's degree in the UK. How did you manage to deal with that? So the experience is really fresh in my mind, so I can really help them. What's your opinion on that?
I think so. There's also a part of me that I know that teachers are supposed to be sort of TEFL Q, and there's this idea that to teach on a pre-session or whatever, you need to have a Delta or a master's or things like that. But I wonder whether that's always the case, or whether there is a case that we can be more flexible about qualifications, given that some of the younger teachers may be very dynamic and capable. They don't necessarily have the sort of years of experience, but they would be perfectly capable of delivering an EAP course online. And the same as going at the other end, that I think it's important not to underestimate older teachers as well, and their capacity to adjust to using technology. And I've always been sort of consistently surprised and happy at how some of our teachers, towards the end of their career, are still able to show interest and engagement with technology, and given the right training, given the help, given the support, they're perfectly capable of adjusting to technology, and being able to bring in all that other knowledge they have as well means they can perhaps offer something even more than younger teachers.
I mean, a combination of ages and experiences, I believe it's an ideal situation, as long as everyone has an open mind. Another very, very interesting question is about teaching teams, how people manage to collaborate. If you had any issues with teachers not willing to collaborate with one another.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was a real sort of experiment for us. Now, I'd be interested to hear from people who've done this sort of team teaching, particularly since going online, how you felt about it, because it was something we implemented on. It was both a technical reason, because we were worried that connections, we weren't sure if teachers' connections from their home, whether they were going to break down, and if they got kicked out the room, students were just going to be sat there for periods of time without a teacher. So we thought it'd be good to have a second teacher, so that they could kind of share that burden if anything happened. And I think generally it seemed to work quite well, I think. And maybe some of the people who taught in the summer here, and I think Tom's here from the summer, we had very few. There was the odd, disagreement and the odd sort of issue, and that's inevitable. But I think that the team teaching is actually quite a nice way for us to actually get a view into what other people do. We so rarely see other teachers. Teachers have this kind of bit of a black box mentality with their classroom. They don't like other people coming in, and I completely understand that. But going online has enabled teachers to actually work together a lot better. So I think that's really good.
Let me interrupt you, because people like haven't taken very well my comment about age and technology. I mean, there is the opposite. I mean, doubt. If you're younger, you cannot teach AP, and if you're older, you are perfectly capable of teaching AP. I mean, I have experienced prejudice about my age,
Yes.
not other people's ages. I mean, I was always the youngest in the room, and people were like, "Oh, maybe you can't really teach AP." Yeah. So I mean, I think it's quite the opposite.
Yeah, I think there's prejudice at both ends, basically, at both ends of the age spectrum, where there's a feeling that, you know, younger people don't have the knowledge or skills or, you know, experience to teach it. Older people don't have the sort of technology knowledge, which again I think has been proved wrong time and time again. So I think it's really, you know, I think we can just sort of abandon any sort of, you know, these age barriers and just focus on what people can actually do and their capabilities. That's the most important thing. And to be honest, I don't care. I don't care if someone's 21 or 81. If they're able to teach and they're capable, that's the most important thing.
Something happened with the connection. David, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Oh.
Okay. Okay, can people still hear me? Hello, hello. Craig, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, David. Sorry, okay. I'm not too sure what's happened there.
No, I don't know.
Right, okay. Yeah, it was really interesting listening to what you had to say there, David. And one of my former colleagues from Nazarbayev University in Nur-Sultan, Kazakhstan is watching this at the moment. And she mentioned that one of the things that really helped them, because they all moved on to online remote teaching, was that they'd continually sort of pushed technology and provided training for teachers, you know, in the last sort of 3 years, whether it was doing sessions on how to use things like Office 365, using different types of presentation software, etc. I think they were in a much better position. They were more prepared, so that when the kind of quick move to online teaching happened, they were sort of more ready for it. So I think being sort of prepared, being not only sort of responsive to sort of responding to what happens at a certain time, but sort of being proactive as well. And as you say, kind of developing that sort of culture of technology and investing in people, kind of, in my opinion, kind of puts people in a better position to run such a course and do it well.
Yeah.
Sorry for disappearing for a while. Something happened with my connection. I just posted the certificate of attendance for everyone in the chat box. Can you see it?
Yep.
Okay. Please let me know if you can't see it. So we would like to thank David for his very, very interesting keynote speech. I mean, it's a very hot topic these days, and we would like to thank you for taking the time to come and present. Really, really grateful for that. And I promise you, tomorrow I'm going to log in and start studying for the course. I know we start Friday, but I didn't have any time with the conference, you know, I logged in, I accessed the course, but I didn't have time, you know, to start interacting and contributing. I'm going to post the certificate of attendance again. And I would like to welcome Craig. He's going to introduce our next keynote speaker.
Okay. I just want